Hi, my name is Emma Carter. I am 22 years old and I live in Chicago, Illinois. I'm a university student studying psychology, but my real challenge for the longest time wasn't related to my studies. It was learning how to think in English. You might be wondering, wait, Emma, aren't you already in the United States? Isn't English your first language? Well, no. I grew up speaking Spanish at home because my parents immigrated from Mexico before I was born. English was always around me, but I struggled with fluency, not in understanding, but in thinking and speaking naturally without translating in my head. So today, I want to share my personal journey with you, how I went from constantly translating in my head to actually thinking in English. I'll explain the science behind it, why we struggle with it, and, most importantly, how you can achieve it too. If you've ever felt stuck between your native language and English, this story is for you. The struggle of thinking in English. Let me take you back a few years. I was in high school when I realized that, although I had been learning English for years, something still felt off. My English grades were good, and I understood my teachers. But when it came to conversations, I felt slow. If someone asked me, "How was your weekend?" I would first think in Spanish, "¿Cómo estuvo mi fin de semana?" then translate it into English before answering. This process made me feel awkward and slow in conversations. It wasn't that I didn't know English. The words were there, but they didn't come naturally. It was like my brain had an extra step, thinking in Spanish first, translating, then speaking. Because of this, I avoided speaking in English as much as possible, sticking to my Spanish-speaking friends. I was scared of making mistakes, of speaking too slowly, of sounding unnatural. One day, my professor, Dr. Anderson, pulled me aside after class and asked, "Emma, I've noticed you don't participate much. Do you feel uncomfortable speaking in class?" I admitted that I felt self-conscious because I was always translating in my head. That's when he told me something that changed my perspective completely. The science behind thinking in a new language. Dr. Anderson explained that thinking in English isn't just about knowing vocabulary. It's about training your brain to process thoughts differently. He said, "Your brain is like a computer. Right now, every time you want to speak, you're opening one file in Spanish, translating, then creating a new file in English. That's slowing you down. The goal is to create direct connections between ideas and English words." He introduced me to the concept of neural pathways, the way our brain forms connections when learning something new. When you start learning English, your brain takes the longer route, relying on your native language as a reference. But with practice, you can build direct pathways where your brain connects ideas directly to English without needing translation. That day, I made a promise to myself. I was going to train my brain to think in English. How I started thinking in English. At first, it wasn't easy. Changing how your brain works takes time, but I started with small steps. Here's exactly what I did. 1. Talking to myself in English. Doctor Anderson suggested that I start narrating my day in English. Instead of thinking, "Voy a la tienda," I'm going to the store, I would force myself to think, "I'm going to the store." I did this for everything: brushing my teeth, cooking, walking to class. It felt silly at first, but it worked. 2. Describing everything around me. I started labeling things in my head in English. If I was on the train, I would look around and describe things. That man is reading a newspaper. The girl next to him is wearing a red jacket. This helped me create direct connections between what I saw and the English words. 3. Avoiding translation. One of the hardest parts was breaking the habit of translating. Every time I caught myself thinking in Spanish first, I stopped and forced myself to restart the thought in English. For example, instead of translating tengo hambre to I am hungry, I trained myself to recognize the feeling of hunger and think directly in English. I'm hungry. 4. Thinking in full sentences. Instead of thinking in single words, I pushed myself to think in full sentences. Instead of just hungry, I would think, I'm hungry. I should make a sandwich. This helped my brain build longer, more natural English thoughts. 5. Immersing myself in English, I changed my phone's language to English, started watching TV shows in English without subtitles, and listened to English podcasts. One of my favorites was English Elevate Express, a podcast that teaches people how to think and speak fluently in English. 6. Having conversations in English. This was the hardest step because it meant stepping out of my comfort zone. I forced myself to speak in English even with my Spanish-speaking friends. I told them, from now on, let's only speak English. It was awkward at first, but over time, it became more natural. The turning point after months of practice, something amazing happened. I caught myself thinking in English without effort. I was walking to class one morning when I realized that all my thoughts were in English. I wasn't translating anymore. I didn't have to stop and find the right words. They just came to me. One day, my professor asked me a question in class, and without hesitation, I answered in English without overthinking it. That moment was proof that my brain had finally switched to thinking in English. My transformation didn't stop at that pivotal moment in class. Over the following months, I noticed subtle shifts in every part of my life. Mornings became my favorite time to practice. As I sipped my coffee and watched the sunrise over the Chicago skyline, I would narrate my thoughts out loud. The sky is painted with soft pinks and oranges today, I'd say, feeling an almost tangible connection between the beauty outside and the words flowing from my mind. It was during these quiet moments that I began to truly appreciate how thinking in English was reshaping not only my language skills, but also my entire perspective on the world. Every day presented a new opportunity for growth. In class, I volunteered for discussions I once would have shied away from. I found that the more I expressed myself in English, the less daunting the language barrier became. I began to relish group projects where I could debate, brainstorm, and share ideas without the constant interruption of translation. It was as if my brain was slowly rewiring itself, forging stronger connections directly to English. Dr. Anderson noticed my progress too. During one of our after-class conversations, he remarked, "Emma, you're not just speaking English now, you're thinking it. Your ideas are coming out so fluidly, it's like you're using a whole new mode of expression." His words filled me with pride and encouraged me to continue pushing forward. I also began to see the impact of my newfound fluency in unexpected places. One crisp autumn afternoon, while sitting in my favorite corner of a bustling cafe near the university, I listened to a lively conversation among a group of students. I found myself effortlessly joining in, contributing insights on topics ranging from psychology to current events. The ease with which I now conversed in English wasn't just a sign of progress, it was a transformation that rippled into every facet of my life. Conversations that once felt like daunting puzzles were now smooth and natural, each word fitting perfectly into the broader picture of my thoughts. As my confidence grew, so did my willingness to explore new avenues. I began attending local community events and even joined a book club that met weekly at a nearby library. The club discussions, rich with diverse perspectives and lively debates, challenged me to articulate complex ideas on the fly. I remember one evening, we were discussing a novel that tackled themes of identity and migration. When it was my turn to speak, I shared not just my interpretation of the story, but also bits of my own journey, how learning to think in English had redefined my identity. The response was overwhelming. The other members of the club appreciated my honesty and insight, and it felt as if I had finally found a community where my voice was both heard and valued. These experiences weren't without their challenges. There were days when I still stumbled over words, and moments when an old habit of translating from Spanish would briefly creep back in. But rather than viewing these as setbacks, I came to see them as necessary stepping stones on a long road to mastery. I kept a journal in English, meticulously recording both my successes and my struggles. On days when I felt frustrated, reading back through my entries reminded me of how far I had come. Each sentence was a marker of progress, a small victory that, when combined, told the story of a girl determined to overcome her limitations. One particularly memorable day, I was invited to present a research project on bilingualism in cognitive development. As I stood in front of my classmates and professors, I recounted my personal journey alongside scientific insights on neural pathways and language acquisition. Explaining how my brain had learned to bypass the translation process and directly connect ideas to English, I felt an immense sense of validation. Not only was I sharing academic knowledge, but I was also offering a real-life testament to the power of perseverance. The presentation was a success, and later, several professors expressed interest in discussing potential research collaborations with me. That experience reinforced the idea that mastering a language wasn't just about words. It was about unlocking new possibilities and forging a path toward future opportunities. My improved command of English also opened doors in my personal life. I began volunteering at a local community center where I helped recent immigrants navigate language barriers in their everyday lives. Teaching English conversation classes and sharing my own experiences with students from various backgrounds became incredibly fulfilling. I saw myself reflected in their eyes, the same initial hesitation, the same determination to adapt and grow. Through these interactions, I realized that my journey was not unique. It was a common struggle that many faced, and by sharing my story, I could help light the way for others. The more I immersed myself in English, the more I discovered about the language's nuances. I started to appreciate the subtleties of idioms, the rhythm of everyday conversation, and even the humor embedded in cultural references. Watching American television shows and films without subtitles became an unexpected joy. I laughed at the witty banter, cried during heartfelt moments, and marveled at how these narratives resonated with my own life experiences. Each new word and phrase I learned enriched my understanding, not just of the language, but of the people and the culture that spoke it. Yet, perhaps the most profound change was internal. As I began thinking in English more naturally, I noticed that my confidence extended beyond language. I started making decisions with a clarity and decisiveness that I hadn't experienced before. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable, be it in academic projects, social interactions, or personal dilemmas, became opportunities to apply a more analytical and direct way of thinking. It was as if unlocking a new language also unlocked a new way of approaching life. I realized that the journey to think in English was as much about personal growth as it was about language acquisition. It required me to confront my fears, embrace my vulnerabilities, and commit to a relentless pursuit of improvement. There were moments of doubt, times when I felt overwhelmed by the sheer effort required to change my internal dialogue. But every time I persevered, I discovered new strengths within myself. The process taught me that learning is not a linear path, but a winding road filled with both triumphs and setbacks. As graduation approaches and I reflect on my academic journey, I'm filled with gratitude for every challenge I faced along the way. The struggle to think in English transformed into a powerful tool that allowed me to express my ideas, share my story, and connect with a community that celebrates diversity in all its forms. My journey continues even as I step into the next chapter of my life, armed with the knowledge that language is not just a means of communication, it's a lens through which we view the world. To anyone reading this who may still be grappling with the same challenges I once did, know that every small step counts. Embrace the process, celebrate your progress, and remember that every moment spent practicing is an investment in a more confident, articulate version of yourself. The science behind thinking in English is fascinating, but it's your personal determination that truly makes the difference. I hope that my journey inspires you to take that first step, to push beyond the familiar, and to discover the incredible potential that lies within you. My journey continued to unfold in unexpected and deeply rewarding ways. With each passing day at the marketing firm, I found myself facing new challenges that pushed me even further out of my comfort zone. One brisk winter morning, I was tasked with presenting a proposal for a major campaign to a room full of senior executives. I remember standing at the front of the conference room, my heart pounding as I glanced at the expectant faces around me. This was the ultimate test. Not only did I have to articulate complex ideas on the spot, but I also had to do it entirely in English, without the safety net of translating from Spanish. I took a deep breath and began. Instead of meticulously crafting my thoughts in my head, I let them flow naturally, drawing on the countless hours of practice I had invested. As I explained the research behind our strategy, touching on consumer behavior trends, the influence of cultural nuances, and the science of neural pathways that shape how we process language, I realized that I was no longer hesitating between two languages. The ideas came directly, and the words followed almost effortlessly. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment before a wave of enthusiastic applause filled the space. That day, I truly felt the power of thinking in English. not just as a linguistic skill, but as a way to unlock my full creative potential. Beyond the boardroom, my daily life was equally enriched by this transformation. Evenings often found me at a local cafe, where I would sit with a warm cup of coffee and observe the vibrant street life of Chicago. In these quiet moments, I practiced describing my surroundings in vivid detail. The neon lights are reflecting off the wet pavement, creating a mosaic of colors, I would think, or sometimes even speak softly to myself. This simple exercise, repeated day after day, helped solidify the direct connection between what I experienced and how I expressed it in English. I began to see the world not just in images and sensations, but in a rich tapestry of words and ideas that felt innately my own. My internship wasn't the only arena where I put my new skills to the test. I continued my volunteer work at the community center, where I taught English conversation classes to recent immigrants. Every session was a reminder of my own journey, the struggles, the breakthroughs, and the continuous effort required to bridge two worlds. I watched as my students gradually found their voices, their hesitations fading as they began to think directly in English. Sharing my own story with them, I would explain the science behind how our brains form neural connections. I'd say, imagine your brain as a network of roads. In the beginning, you take a detour through your native language. With practice, you build a highway straight to English. Their eyes would light up with understanding, and in those moments, I felt a deep sense of purpose. I wasn't just teaching a language. I was helping others reshape the very way they perceived and interacted with the world. There were, of course, moments of self-doubt and fatigue. Late nights spent revisiting my journal entries, a chronicle of every small victory and every frustrating setback, reminded me that progress was rarely linear. Some days, the familiar urge to revert to my native tongue crept in, particularly during stressful moments or when faced with a challenging concept. On those days, I would pause and remind myself of how far I'd come, from the anxious high school student who hesitated to speak in class, to the confident young woman presenting complex ideas to industry leaders. Each memory was a testament to the power of persistence and the transformative impact of embracing a new way of thinking. One particularly memorable experience came when I attended a regional conference on digital innovation. The event brought together experts from various fields, technology, marketing, psychology, to discuss the future of communication in a globalized world. As I navigated the lively discussions and networking sessions, I found that thinking in English had given me a unique edge. Not only could I follow the rapid pace of conversation, but I also found that I could contribute nuanced insights that blended my bilingual background with my academic training in psychology. During a roundtable discussion, I shared my perspective on how direct neural connections in language learning could foster creativity and improve cognitive flexibility. The conversation was animated, with several experts nodding in agreement and adding their own experiences to the mix. It was in that moment I realized that my personal journey was part of a larger narrative, a narrative of how language shapes thought and ultimately the future of human communication. Outside of these professional milestones, my personal life was undergoing its own subtle metamorphosis. I started to notice that thinking in English was influencing my dreams and inner monologues. I dreamed in English, vivid scenes where the language flowed as naturally as the feelings behind them. Waking up, I often found myself jotting down dream fragments in my journal, fascinated by how my subconscious was adapting to the new linguistic landscape. It was as if my entire mind was becoming bilingual, not just in speech, but in thought. This deep integration of language and identity made me appreciate the intricate relationship between communication and self-expression. With each new challenge, be it a critical presentation at work, a heartfelt conversation with a volunteer, or an insightful discussion with friends, I found that my confidence in using English was not solely about linguistic ability. It was about understanding that language is a living, evolving part of who we are. My journey was no longer just about overcoming a barrier. It was about embracing a new lens through which I viewed the world. I began to see language as a bridge that connected me to people, ideas, and opportunities that I might have otherwise missed. As the months turned into years, I made it a point to keep learning and evolving. I enrolled in advanced language workshops, attended seminars on cognitive science, and even started a blog where I documented my experiences with bilingualism and neural adaptation. My blog became a platform for sharing insights and sparking conversations with others who were navigating similar challenges. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Readers from all over the United States and beyond reached out to share their own stories, each echoing the struggles and triumphs that defined my journey. In time, I came to understand that the science behind thinking in English was not confined to academic theories or clinical studies. It was a living, breathing phenomenon that impacted every facet of life. It was about rewiring the brain to see the world through a different set of colors, sounds, and rhythms. Every conversation, every written word, and every thought was a step toward a more integrated, authentic self. The process taught me that language is not static. It is dynamic, evolving with every new experience and every new connection made. Looking back now, I see a mosaic of moments, each one a testament to the power of persistence, the beauty of learning, and the transformative nature of embracing a new way of thinking. My journey, marked by the milestones of academic achievement, professional growth, and personal discovery, continues to inspire me every day. I have learned that while the science behind thinking in English provides the framework, it is the passion, resilience, and unwavering commitment to growth that truly make the difference. As I continue on this path, I remain excited about the endless possibilities ahead. I am no longer defined by the constraints of translation or the fears of miscommunication. Instead, I stand as a testament to the idea that with determination and a willingness to embrace change, we can rewire our minds and unlock new realms of creativity, connection, and self-expression. My story is a continuous journey, one thought, one conversation, and one breakthrough at a time. And I invite anyone who is struggling with language barriers to take that leap of faith. Embrace the science, trust the process, and watch as your world transforms, word by word. Every day, as I wake up and greet the world in English, I remind myself that my journey is far from over. There will always be new words to learn, new ideas to explore, and new challenges to conquer. But with every step, I grow more confident, more resilient, and more attuned to the infinite possibilities that language can offer. And so, with a heart full of hope and a mind ever eager to learn, I continue to write the story of my life, one that is deeply intertwined with the science behind thinking in English and the incredible power it has to shape who we are. My journey continued to unfold in ways I never could have imagined. Each day, I discovered new layers of my identity, layers built not only on mastering English, but on integrating that mastery into every aspect of my life. I still remember the crisp autumn day when I first truly realized that the habit of thinking in English was now as natural as breathing. I was walking along the lakefront in Chicago, the cool wind stirring memories and new ideas alike, when I caught myself planning my day entirely in English. I wasn't mentally switching from Spanish at all. My thoughts were fluid, unburdened by translation. That moment was both exhilarating and humbling, a clear sign that the hours of self-talk, journaling, and immersion had rewired my mind. At the same time, new challenges arose. My internship at the marketing firm evolved into a more demanding role, and I was given responsibility for coordinating a national campaign. The project required innovative ideas, creative strategies, and the confidence to communicate complex plans under tight deadlines. Standing in a sleek conference room in downtown Chicago, I delivered my ideas directly in English, without hesitation, without second-guessing. I described market trends, consumer behaviors, and even referenced cutting-edge research on neural pathways and bilingual thinking. The smooth delivery surprised even me. It was as if my mind had built an expressway straight to English, bypassing the old circuitous route of translation. That pivotal presentation not only earned applause from my colleagues, but also opened doors I'd only dreamed about. I began collaborating on projects that merged marketing with cognitive science, working alongside experts who were fascinated by how bilingualism could be a catalyst for creativity. I even joined a research team at the University of Chicago, spearheaded by my mentor, Dr. Anderson, whose guidance had sparked my initial breakthrough. Together, we conducted studies exploring the impact of direct language processing on problem-solving and decision-making. One study involved tracking brain activity through fMRI scans, while participants engaged in tasks in both English and Spanish. Seeing the differences in neural activation, especially the efficient patterns emerging in those who thought directly in English, was both scientifically enlightening and deeply personal. Amid these professional milestones, my personal life blossomed as well. I continued volunteering at the community center, where I led English conversation classes for recent immigrants. Every session was a reminder of my humble beginnings and the struggles I'd overcome. I shared with my students the techniques that had helped me, the power of self-narration, the importance of avoiding translation, and the magic that happens when you immerse yourself fully in a language. I would often use an analogy I'd once heard. Imagine your brain as a vast network of roads. Initially, you take detours through your native language. With time and practice, you build a direct highway to English. Their nods of understanding and the spark in their eyes were priceless. I was not only teaching them a language, but also empowering them to transform their way of thinking. In the midst of all this, life continued to surprise me with its blend of challenges and triumphs. I remember a chilly winter evening when I attended a local cultural event at a community center in downtown Chicago. The event celebrated the rich tapestry of American diversity, and I was invited to share my story. Standing before a small, attentive audience, I recounted my transformation from a hesitant student who constantly translated in her head to a confident speaker whose thoughts flowed freely in English. I spoke about the science behind it, the neural connections, the brain's ability to adapt, and I shared practical tips that had helped me along the way. As I finished, the room filled with encouraging applause and warm smiles. It was a reminder that every struggle, every late-night practice session, and every moment of self-doubt had led to this singular point of connection. My days gradually merged into a rhythm of continual growth. Mornings were reserved for quiet reflection and narration as I sipped coffee by my apartment window, overlooking the bustling streets of Chicago. Afternoons were spent engaging with colleagues, immersing myself in work that combined my love for psychology and language, and even tackling creative writing projects with a group of like-minded friends. One of these friends, Olivia Martinez, a vibrant and talented writer, became an essential part of my journey. Olivia, who had also navigated the rocky path of finding her voice in English, and I soon began collaborating on creative projects. We held long, animated discussions about literature, culture, and identity, often exchanging ideas that spanned both English and Spanish. Our friendship was a blend of shared struggle and mutual triumph, and together, we even started working on a collaborative book exploring the interplay between language and identity in a multicultural America. While these creative projects and professional endeavors were fulfilling, they also demanded a delicate balance. I still had moments of vulnerability, days when the old habit of reverting to Spanish in moments of stress or fatigue tempted me. On those days, I would return to my journal, reading entries that chronicled every small victory and every lesson learned. The ink on those pages was a testament to my perseverance, a tangible record of how far I had come. Every word was a reminder that progress is not linear, but a mosaic of ups and downs, each piece contributing to the masterpiece of self-improvement. Then came another transformative opportunity, a national symposium on bilingual education held in New York City. Invited to speak among a diverse group of educators, researchers, and policymakers, I was both honored and anxious. I spent weeks preparing my presentation, poring over research articles and personal notes, determined to capture both the scientific underpinnings and the emotional core of my journey. As I stepped onto the stage in a grand auditorium filled with hundreds of faces, I felt that familiar flutter of nerves. But as I began to speak, the words flowed naturally. I recounted my personal evolution from a girl hesitant to speak in English to a young woman who now thought seamlessly in the language. I explained the science of neural pathways and the practical steps that helped me build them. I stressed that thinking in English was not about abandoning one's heritage, but about expanding the horizon of one's mind, a bridge that connected cultures rather than a barrier that divided them. The response was overwhelming. After my talk, I received heartfelt messages from educators who wanted to implement my strategies in their classrooms, from students who felt inspired to start their own journeys, and from fellow researchers eager to collaborate on further studies. One message, in particular, from a young teacher in San Francisco, resonated deeply with me. She wrote, "Your story has given me hope and a roadmap to help my students break free from language barriers." In that moment, I knew that my journey was part of something much larger, a ripple effect of transformation spreading through communities across the country. As the months turned into years, I found myself reflecting on the beautiful complexity of language and the human mind. I enrolled in advanced workshops on cognitive neuroscience and participated in international conferences that delved into the intricacies of bilingual thought. I continued to mentor students and volunteer at community centers, always mindful of the fact that every conversation, every internal monologue in English was a step toward a richer, more integrated self. I also began exploring how my journey could intersect with other aspects of my life. My personal relationships, for instance, evolved in unexpected ways. I started dating a kind-hearted man named Daniel Rivera, who, like me, appreciated the nuances of language and the power of self-expression. Our conversations were a delightful dance between English and Spanish, a celebration of our shared heritage and our commitment to growth. With Daniel, I learned that love, like language, was about balance and mutual understanding. He supported my endeavors and celebrated my triumphs, and together, we discovered that the interplay between two languages could be a source of endless creativity and connection. As my professional and personal worlds expanded, so did my vision for the future. I began to envision a life where I could merge my passion for psychology, language, and cultural diversity into a career that made a tangible difference. I applied to a prestigious graduate program in cognitive neuroscience, determined to further explore the impact of bilingualism on the human brain. My research proposals drew on everything I had learned, from the science of neural pathways to the practical techniques of immersive language practice. I was eager to contribute to a growing body of knowledge that could one day help millions overcome language barriers and unlock their full potential. Throughout it all, I maintained a deep connection to my roots. I still spoke Spanish with my family, savored traditional meals, and celebrated cultural holidays. I learned that thinking in English didn't mean erasing who I was. Rather, it enriched my identity and allowed me to see the world from a broader, more inclusive perspective. In my heart, I carried both languages with equal pride, knowing that each had its own unique beauty and power. Now, as I sit in a quiet corner of a bustling cafe in downtown Chicago, I often reflect on the winding road that brought me here. The science behind thinking in English is as fascinating as the personal journey it catalyzed, a journey marked by perseverance, passion, and an unwavering commitment to growth. Every sunrise brings with it a new opportunity to embrace life, to think deeply, and to express myself authentically. And every day, I remind myself that while the process of transformation is never truly complete, each step forward is a victory in itself. To anyone reading my story, whether you're struggling with a language barrier or facing any other challenge, know that progress is possible. Embrace every small victory, learn from every setback, and remember that your journey is uniquely your own. With determination, resilience, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone, you too can unlock the transformative power of language. My name is Emma Carter, and this journey, the journey of thinking in English and reshaping my world one thought at a time, is a testament to the incredible potential that lies within us all. As I sit here reflecting on the many twists and turns of my journey, I realize that what once seemed like an insurmountable barrier has transformed into a bridge connecting me to endless possibilities. I no longer see the act of thinking in English as merely a linguistic achievement. It is a symbol of growth, resilience, and the boundless potential that lies within every one of us. Every challenge I faced, from the awkward days of constant translation to the exhilarating moments of speaking effortlessly in boardrooms and at community events, has contributed to the tapestry of who I am today. The science behind those neural pathways taught me that our brains can adapt in remarkable ways when we push ourselves beyond comfort, and my personal transformation stands as living proof of that truth. Now, as I prepare to step into new academic challenges and further explore the intersections of psychology, language, and culture, I carry with me not just the skills of fluent communication, but also a deeper understanding of my identity. Embracing both English and Spanish has enriched my perspective and allowed me to celebrate the beauty of diversity within my own mind. To anyone facing similar hurdles, remember that every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. The journey to think in English is not just about language, it's about evolving into a more confident, open, and integrated version of yourself. This story may be coming to its final pages, but for me, it's only the beginning of a lifelong adventure of learning, sharing, and connecting. Tips and tricks to think in English and achieve fluency. Thinking in English is one of the most powerful ways to become fluent. When you stop translating in your head and start processing ideas directly in English, your speech becomes more natural, fluid, and confident. But how do you train your brain to think in English? Here, I will share detailed tips and tricks, explaining the science behind them and how they helped me transition from struggling with translation to thinking effortlessly in English. 1. Start with simple vocabulary and phrases. If you're new to thinking in English, start small. Don't force yourself to construct complex sentences in your mind right away. Instead, begin by using simple words and phrases in everyday situations. What to do. Label objects around you in English. For example, when you see your phone, think phone instead of translating it from your native language. When walking outside, describe what you see in English. The sky is blue. The road is crowded. The trees are green. Why does this work? Your brain gets used to associating words with meanings instead of translating. This technique strengthens the direct connection between English words and your thoughts. 2. Speak to yourself in English. Self-talk method. One of the best ways to train your brain to think in English is to have conversations with yourself. What to do? Talk to yourself in front of a mirror, narrating what you're doing. I'm brushing my teeth. I have to finish my work. I need to go to the store. Before sleeping, review your day in English. Today was a good day. I studied English. I met my friends. and I ate delicious food. Imagine a situation and role-play both sides of the conversation. What would I say if someone asked me about my hobbies? Why does this work? Speaking to yourself helps you overcome hesitation, build confidence, and form automatic responses in English. 3. Avoid translating from your native language. Translating every word or sentence from your native language slows you down. It makes your speech sound unnatural and prevents you from developing fluency. What to do? When you don't know a word, try to explain it in English rather than translating. For example, if you don't know the word refrigerator, describe it as the place where we keep food cold. Read English definitions instead of bilingual dictionaries. This forces you to think in English rather than in your native language. Why does this work? Your brain builds a direct pathway between thoughts and English words, eliminating the habit of mentally switching languages. 4. Use English in daily life. Surround yourself with English as much as possible to make thinking in English a natural habit. What to do? Change the language on your phone, social media, and apps to English. Write grocery lists, reminders, and to-do lists in English. If you like journaling, write about your thoughts, feelings, and daily experiences in English. Why does this work? The more you use English in your daily life, the more your brain gets used to it. Thinking in English becomes automatic when English becomes a regular part of your routine. 5. Listen and imitate native speakers. Shadowing technique. Listening to native speakers helps you absorb natural pronunciation, sentence structure, and thinking patterns. What to do? Listen to English podcasts, audiobooks, or TV shows. Choose a short sentence and repeat it immediately after hearing it. This is called shadowing. Focus on how native speakers structure their sentences and imitate their way of speaking. Why does this work? Your brain starts processing English the way native speakers do. Shadowing also improves pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. 6. Think in images, not words. When you see an apple, don't think manzana, Spanish, apple, English. Just think apple. What to do? Visualize objects and associate them with English words directly. Instead of translating, train yourself to think in images and attach English words to them. Why does this work? Your brain creates a direct connection between English words and their meanings, making English thinking more natural. 7. Use flashcards with pictures. Instead of translations, flashcards help reinforce vocabulary, but instead of translating, use pictures to represent words. What to do? Use apps like Anki or Quizlet with images instead of translations. For example, instead of writing dog equals Pero, use a picture of a dog and just write dog. Why does this work? Your brain learns words faster when associated with visual memory rather than translations. 8. Practice with a language partner or join English groups. Speaking with others in English forces your brain to think quickly without translating. What to do? Find a language exchange partner, someone learning your native language while you learn English. Join online forums, social media groups, or apps like Tandem and Hello Talk. More advanced tips and tricks to think in English. If you've already started practicing thinking in English, but want to take it to the next level, Here are more advanced techniques that will help you rewire your brain to think effortlessly in English. These methods will deepen your fluency, improve your speed of thought, and eliminate hesitation when speaking. 11. Develop a thinking in English habit. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to think in English is that they haven't built a habit around it. Thinking in English needs to become second nature. What to do? Set specific times in your day when you will only think in English, e.g., during your morning walk, while eating, before sleeping. Use a reminder on your phone. Set an alarm labeled Think in English a few times a day. Reward yourself for completing your Thinking in English sessions. Why does this work? The brain works best with consistency. By scheduling thinking in English time daily, your brain will get used to it, and over time, it will become automatic. 12th, practice mind mapping in English. Mind mapping is a visual way to organize your thoughts in English, making it easier to think quickly. What to do? Take a blank paper and write a topic in the center, e.g., my favorite hobby. Draw branches connecting words or phrases related to that topic in English. Instead of writing translations, use pictures or synonyms. Why does this work? Mind mapping trains your brain to link words together in English rather than thinking in your native language first. It boosts creativity and quick thinking. 13. Learn to describe words in English. Circumlocution strategy. Sometimes you might forget a word while thinking in English. Instead of switching back to your native language, train yourself to describe the word in English. What to do? If you forget the word thermometer, say, it's the thing that measures temperature. If you forget pillow, say, it's something soft that you put your head on while sleeping. Why does this work? This technique forces your brain to stay in English rather than switching languages. It also improves your ability to explain ideas naturally. 14. Think in full sentences instead of single words. Many people think in single English words, but this isn't enough. Your goal should be to think in full sentences. What to do? Instead of thinking water, think I need to drink some water. Instead of phone, think I forgot my phone at home. Imagine explaining something to a friend and think in complete sentences. Why does this work? Thinking in full sentences helps you practice grammar naturally and trains your brain to process thoughts in English quickly. 15. Use the 5 senses technique to train your brain to think faster in English. Use all 5 senses while thinking. What to do? Sight. Describe what you see around you. The trees are moving because of the wind. Hearing. Describe the sounds you hear. I can hear birds singing outside. Touch. Describe how something feels. My blanket is very soft. Taste. Describe what you are eating. This coffee is bitter and hot. Smell. Describe the scents around you. I smell fresh bread from the bakery. Why does this work? This method makes English thinking automatic because you connect words with real experiences instead of translations. 16. Simulate real-life situations in your mind. Thinking in English becomes easier when you practice real-life situations in your mind. What to do? Imagine yourself ordering food in a restaurant. Think about how you would talk to the waiter. I'd like a cheeseburger with fries, please. Imagine yourself talking to a friend about your weekend plans. I'm planning to go to the beach on Saturday. Do you want to join? Imagine yourself at a job interview, answering common questions. Why does this work? It prepares you for real conversations and reduces hesitation when speaking. 17. Practice thinking in different English accents. To fully develop your English thinking skills, expose yourself to different English accents: American, British, Australian, etc. What to do? Listen to different English accents in podcasts, YouTube videos, or movies. Try to mimic the accent when thinking in English. Watch interviews of English speakers from different countries and observe how they speak. Why does this work? Your brain learns different ways of pronouncing and structuring sentences, making English more natural for you. 18. Play word association games. This technique improves your speed of thinking in English. What to do? Pick a random word and think of related words in English. Example: school, teacher, students, exams, books, library. Try to connect words in a logical story.